Hey guys, welcome to this new video. Today is gonna be the second part of the interview with Frederic. I remember you, Frederic journey going to Cambodia, Vietnam. He was captured by the Khmer Rouge, then he opens the first joint venture in Vietnam. If you want to check this part of the video, you can check in the description to watch the part 1. And in this video today, we're gonna go through his journey moving to Japan. So he's gonna share the differences between emerging countries and Japan. And if you guys want to relocate to Japan to find opportunity, a job there in this time of Corona crisis, you will learn everything from Frederic. Let's get started. Everyone is talking about Japan as a good mix between tradition and innovation. Can you share maybe about the differences that you observed between the emerging countries at that time and what you found in Japan about that?
Well, we're talking some 30 years back. At that time, the country was clearly Japan. And I had been a few times to Japan as a tourist, sometimes for some meetings. I didn't know much. But one thing I was sure is if you want to make your life more easy in Japan, and life in Japan is comfortable but is complicated when you want to be really involved. And how can you be abroad if you're not involved? In this case, you stay in France. Even in France, you have to be involved anyway. So I said, if I want to be involved, if I want to accomplish my mission, I need to speak Japanese. So I made a deal with the company I was working for, which was still one of the subsidiary of Ron Poulain Group. And I said, look, you want me to set up a new project in the veterinary business. There was nothing. And there was nothing, but Japan was, in value, the number 2 veterinary market in the world. So the potential was huge. So I said, if we go there, we must have the best assets for us, the best tokens. And Japan is one of them. So do you agree that, of course, I keep on working for you, but you put me into brackets for 1.5 years. There is one program organized by the EU where there is a strong selection. I try to be selected. If I'm selected, then for 1.5 years, I don't work, but I only study full-time in Tokyo Japanese. And and that's what they agreed, and that's I was lucky that they agreed, and that's what I did. And of course, this has been fantastic because I capitalized afterwards on this, and it has helped me a great deal. I don't mean that you cannot work in Japan if you don't speak Japanese, but I mean that it really helps a lot from under many considerations. Okay, so that's the way I thought that I had to prepare myself for a country like Japan. It was very different from what I had lived before. In fact, in Vietnam and even in Indonesia to a certain extent, you could invent every day. You could make your own rules. You could make your handy management, okay? Everything could be arranged in a way. In Japan, you have rules. And before you try to arrange the rules, you have to know the rules. So first thing is to study the rules. And I think, I as I said, the language helps, of course, but also the notion of service, the concept of service, which I told you a little bit before about in Vietnam in a different way, but still is service, is very, very important here. Here in Japan, you are not selling a product. You are selling a package. And in the package, you have the product, you have the service, and you have your own personality. Which percentage of which doesn't matter, but it's a cocktail of these 3 things. If you don't have these 3 things, you are not going to be very successful. You may sell one shot, but you won't get a second one. And if you want to be in Japan, number 1, it's very costly for a company to be in Japan. Number 2, it's costly also because you have to invest, but also you invest not only money, but you invest time, 2 to 3 years, maybe more, before you start getting the first yen back into your pocket, okay? So you have to, the headquarters have to understand this, As a French foreign trade advisor, and I've been doing this is extra, okay? You do this just to help companies on top of your job. And I've been doing this since 1986. And I can tell you, I have seen, unfortunately, a number of companies coming to Japan, believing that after 1 or 2 years, because they have been successful elsewhere, they are going to be very successful in Japan, and they don't. Because they are too much in a hurry, because they haven't put the right people in place, because they have not been patient. And patience is, to me, not only to me, but patience is clearly a key in Asia. If you are not patient, if you don't understand what is going on through patience, through talking to people, repeating, very often is true for local people what you have been repeating a number of times. Who is going to accept to repeat 2 times, 3 times, 5 times? But the more you repeat, the more you are going to get credit for what you say. But to do that, you need patience, right? So patience is definitely part of this cocktail I was telling you about, thanks to which you may have more chances to be successful in Japan than if you just go and say, I know I've been successful in France or in the US. My product is perfect. Why wouldn't it work also in Japan? No, it's like, fortunately or unfortunately, it depends on the way you want to see it, but it's not that simple. You have to understand that tradition is very, very important. And our Western traditions are quite different very often from Eastern traditions. So you have to give value to this. You cannot just say, I want to make a new rule because it works in the West. In tradition, we promote, in the West, we promote young people. We have to do, when I notice a good talent in Japan, even if he's a young guy, I have to promote him. And he's going, no, you cannot do it this way. If you break too many rules, the first problem you are going to have is almost no Japanese is going to tell you make a mistake, especially if you're the boss. He's going to say, yes, sir, or he's not going to say anything, or he's going, to nod like this, and you will believe that they agree and you are doing the right thing. No, maybe they don't tell you, but you are not doing the right thing. And if you are not doing the right thing, well, and nobody is telling you, after a while, you are going to fail what you are trying to do. So it's very important that you understand it doesn't mean everything is frozen. It doesn't mean you cannot smoothly and slowly change a number of things. But it cannot be overnight, and it has to be smoothly, and again, with a lot of patience and a lot of discussion. And preferably one-to-one. If you make a meeting with all the people you are working with, and you are asking what their opinion is before you take a decision, you are going to take, especially in the very beginning, you are going to get very few opinions. Number one, because giving an opinion, say, maybe I say the wrong thing. This is not what the boss wants to hear. I want to hear anything. I want to know what he thinks. But this is not the way he's going to see. He wants to please me, or at least not to hurt me. Because to hurt me would not only be bad for him, but would not be polite. Okay? So, first guy is not going to tell me much. Second guy, he has no idea. So, he cannot tell me anything. The other one will try to guess what I want to hear, which sometimes I don't want to hear. I don't know what I want to hear. I want to hear, so I don't know what. But the guy is going to try to say what he believes that I like to, etc. But in the end, they are waiting for you to decide and implement your decision. So the first thing to ban, in my view, is big meetings with several Japanese, because they also look at one another. Did I say something stupid? What is my colleague going to think? Or maybe if I say too much, he thinks that I try to please the boss, etc. So what you have to do, preferably, or at least that's the way I always did it, you take one guy after the other. But if you have 6 people working with you, it's going to take instead of 1 hour with 6, it's going to take, if not 6 hours, but a lot of time. And this is why we also say in Japan, we work a lot. The productivity is not that good if you compare with other countries in Japan. But if you don't do this in order to get one-to-one private opinions and then, melt these opinions, make your final thing and say to the people, one, this is what we are going to do. This is the way you are going to help me, and I'm going to help you. Okay? And then they will, what you are saying has a special flavor because it's going to be a combination of what they said, of what they think would be right, telling them, hey, if I were not Japanese, you work for a Japanese company, how would they do this? In your opinion, how would they act? Because I don't know. I would be very interested to know how the Japanese do. Forget about a foreign company. You are working for a Japanese company, you are telling me. Okay, and then you will know more. So once you start having this kind of, at least on the surface, it's a consensus, a decision, at least the way it looks, okay, we could tell much more about this, but once you understand that this is more the traditional way, that this is the way to get opinions, then you can go more into action. And what is next to action is going to be innovation. I am describing you a Japanese society which looks relatively frozen, very stable, very slow. In fact, it's very much the way it looks. Taking decisions takes a lot of time here. We can, take examples of Corona in today in Japan. Wow, we believe we would get through, and we don't, and it's becoming difficult, etc., because of hesitations, because of fear of taking the wrong decision, and also responsibilities are very diluted. So it's difficult to find the guy who is going to take the responsibility partly because of what I told you also before on the way to come to a decision. But when finally the decision is taken, right or wrong, they will go for it. And if it's hopefully the right decision, you will get a result. Okay? And this is where innovation is coming also. The Japanese are spending a lot of money on R&D. They have never, even when they have been in difficult economic situations, they have never decreased that much their R&D percentage of income. And this is probably what is helping them a lot. When the word crisis, okay, which in Japanese is made of two Chinese characters. You say ki. Okay. The first character means dangerous. The second character means opportunity. So a crisis is a danger and an opportunity. Equally, if I may say so. One character for it. And I think it tells a lot about how you react to a crisis.
So because you've been living in Asia for 40 years, right, and you have the last year operating from Japan, what is the place of Japan nowadays in terms of the geopolitical aspect, the tension you have in Asia, as well as the countries that Japan is very close? What is Japan for you today, and what's the opportunities for the next years?
They are today the third power, economic power, but this is not going to last forever. Their demography is very low. Okay, there is a very strong pressure from China. At the same time, a number of countries are more careful, let's say, about China as considered as a danger in the region. And if there is danger, maybe there are more opportunities for Japan in their way they are dealing with ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia, in the way they are dealing with India, possibly also in the way they are dealing to Europe, because they have to be more careful than ever with China. They have a difficult relationship with Russia, which cannot be considered a superpower in the same manner for a number of reasons. Korea is having a difficult game stuck positively or negatively between China and Japan. The US also must more than ever find the right partners in Asia. Japan, again, is and must be a key player. So you see the dangers, but we see also the opportunities. And what I'm saying on a more general and political aspect, I think is very true for any companies which is trying to come and to invest here. In my view, Japan is still a very reliable country in terms of patents, in terms of legal issues, in terms of protection of investments, in terms of openness to the world. Of course, you may give me many counter examples, many difficulties in many fields, and you may say, is Japan really changing? You know, you may always have counter examples, but basically, when you look at the whole situation in Asia, and when I say you look, I'm not saying today. I'm saying for me and other people, less and less, but 40 years back, okay? And you try to project, it's not easy, but what is coming now? Where are the powers? Where are the risks? You probably, in my view, we should not, as we do sometimes, underestimate the country Japan. I do believe it's a very valuable country and where you can bet for the future, even at a smaller scale maybe, but Switzerland has been a very big asset in Europe, okay, and it's not because it's a Swiss market is small, okay. So maybe my comparison is too much, but I just mean look at Japan in a positive manner, because the situation today, and probably to a certain extent in the years to come, are probably putting a nice headlight on Japan, and we shouldn't miss the opportunity.
Okay, interesting, Frederic, to share about the position of Japan nowadays, because I've been sharing a lot about Southeast Asian opportunities, but it's good that you could give your own feeling about how was Japan now and how do you see Japan getting more and more powerful for the next years. Maybe can you share now about what you are doing now on a day-to-day basis and your current project that you are working on in Japan?
As I have been conseiller du commerce extérieur de la France, it's very long in French, but French foreign trade advisor in English, but I just want my friends to recognize what I'm talking about for sure. You know, when you have been doing this for 40 years or so, definitely you have met a number of people. You have met a number of companies. You have seen nice success stories. You have seen terrible failures. And probably, hopefully, you have learned a few things which can be helpful for companies which are newcomers, or companies which are going to be stuck on their way by one difficulty, because we have this distance through the years and we can take advantage of this experience. So that's, I would say, the past, or using the past in order to try to be useful, helpful for some companies now. Now, looking at that's my first activity, if I may say so. My second activity is more involved with what I hope is happening or helping the future with young people. We have, as you know, in France, one institution called Volontaires International à l'Entreprise, VIE. In other words, young entrepreneurs, if you like, okay? So there is a club which has been created 13 years ago, called VIE Club. The headquarters is in France. It has now 27,000 members, so it's big. And all the members are people who have been in their youth, before they were 30 necessarily. They have been VIE somewhere in the world. So it's a fantastic network of people who have been working in every country in the world, So now they are gathering, and because they can exchange a lot of information, they can exchange a lot of information on their careers, on the countries, of course, themselves, on their companies. They can help new people. And also, they are, when they have to hire people, when they have become business people and manage executives, and they have to hire people, of course, hopefully, they are going to privilege people who have done what they did themselves when they were younger, okay? So this is very important, and I've been asked to be in charge of this club in Japan and to supervise the other operations there are in Asia. I'm sure next to this interview, I'm going to have a number of people contacting me on LinkedIn, but that's part of the game. They are asking me how to, they don't ask only me, but I can be one of them to whom they are going to ask how to become a VIE. And they are going to send me their resume. I'm going to, by myself, have an idea if I think they are interesting people or not. If I think they are interesting people, I'm going to try, if they need, generally they need, to help them to prepare interviews. Because they are young people, they have no experience. Okay? So they may be good, but not do the right thing at the moment of the interview because of stress or whatever the reason. Okay? So I try to help some of them. Then I try to help them. You remember, I'm a French trade advisor, so I know some companies possibly who want to hire these guys. Okay, so I am going to be the bridge between these companies and young people who I think can be good candidates. Okay, so then they are going hopefully to apply to work in Japan, for example. They are going to be hired for a period which is going, average is 1 year. Theoretically from 6 months to 2 years, generally is 1 year, and very often much more, okay? In a normal period, outside COVID, we have about 200 to 220 VIE in Japan. Now we have something like 150, okay? Because we don't get new visas for newcomers for the time being, for obvious reasons, So I'm trying then to help them to get new jobs and join the club, of course. And this is the way we are growing and preparing the future. That's what I'm trying to do, helping these people, helping the companies to prepare the future. The more experts we will have in every country, the better it will be for the companies and for the people themselves. Then it's a choice of career, how long they want to stay here, do they want to go somewhere else. Some of them will stay in Japan because they get married in Japan, or because they don't want to go somewhere else, and some of them will leave. I think it's good to have a mix of different countries so that you can learn much more than you are if you are always staying in the same place. But, it depends on everybody's choice and opportunities. Again, dangers and opportunities, are often combined.
Okay, interesting project that you are currently working on and helping the French community to move overseas through this club VIE. Talking to them, can you share maybe now some piece of advice and what you would recommend them to do, maybe actionable plan to get started to maybe find a job overseas?
Yes, it's very difficult to give advice because it depends, of course, very much on the personality of everyone. And also, when you start giving too many advice, especially to young people, you feel very old. So I won't skip your questions still. But more seriously, for me, the key point for anybody looking for a job or not is curiosity. Is the person curious in one's approach, of course, okay? And And is that person, and it goes together, is that person accepting or not differences? If you accept, it doesn't mean you agree, but if you accept that people may be different and you try to understand how different they are, where, to qualify to a certain extent the difference, well, then you keep your curiosity alive, because you want to know more, you want to understand. And I think you cannot go and work, well, it's true anywhere, but especially if you go abroad where, the breaking point with Europe is going to be stronger when you're in Japan than if you are in another country of Europe, of course, okay? But I think curiosity is probably for me the first quality for someone. Now, I think the next step, if you're curious, probably, and remain curious, probably you are going to be very pragmatic in your approach. I think it's important not to lose one's principles, because our principles are guidelines. And sometimes you cannot even completely change your guidelines, but you can adjust. You can soften, them according to the situation. Probably being pragmatic and is also the next. I think it's the next quality if we want to do something. Now, if you're curious, if you're pragmatic, well, for all these reasons, you are going to keep your motivation. It doesn't mean that you are going to be always successful. That would be too easy, okay? But when you fail, it's very important. It's easy to say, not easy to do. It's very important to learn from your failures. Why have I failed? At which moment have I failed? Who should I have listened to? What did I do wrong? In the same situation now, what should I do? It's very important that when you fall, you can stand up again and try again. And this is where your motivation is important. If when you fall, you lose immediately or soon after your motivation, well, then it's the end. Then you have to consider a different life. Maybe it's because you are not done for risks. You are not done for this job you thought you were done for, etc. And it's true in private life too, I think, for many things, okay? So curious, pragmatic, very motivated. And I will just end up with one military motto I like very much, which is in French, croire et oser, which in English would be to believe and dare. And I think it's very, very, very precious motto, which can take you almost, I think, anywhere, even to death for the militaries. But I think it's a very good motto. To do something, you have to be convinced. You have to believe, and to believe doesn't mean to be stubborn. Okay, and then once you have this belief, when you think that you are ready, you have prepared your right weapons, your tools on how to do your project. Well, then you have to go for it. You have to dare. So croire et oser would be my way to see it and to reply finally to your question.
Okay, good summary and a good way to kind of let the people get started. And hopefully, as you say, motivation is key, and it's not because you're going to fail one time that you cannot succeed. And I feel also, moving abroad is a whole journey, right? I'm pretty sure after Cambodia you had some tough time, maybe after other countries, right? And you always learn from the experience you had, and then the country after you are a little bit less naive, you will be a little bit more confident, and after a few months, after a few years repeating that, you're just a stronger person, more confident about your abilities. And then you know maybe more what you want, and you will in the end succeed, right? So thanks, Frédéric, for your sharing about your journey being in Asia and your current activities you are doing. I will leave maybe in the description the link of your LinkedIn. So if people want to reach you out, maybe to get some insight from you, being in Japan now, what's the employment now? Is there any other opportunities through this COVID time? So people can reach you out.
Thank you for your questions and your time. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Frédéric. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
down and I'ma get it right. Get on sight like